So as the Sean Diddy Combs case comes to a close, there's a lot to talk about as it goes into the hands of the jury on Monday.
Yeah, and we actually have a panel to break it all down for us, the latest from the court. So joining us now is attorney and legal analyst Misty Marris and Sharay Hayes. He was a key witness in the trial, known as the male escort punisher. Thank you both for being here.
All right, thank you guys both. Really appreciate it. So, Misty, let's begin with you. We had the summations right now. It is widely believed that the prosecution really closed its case yesterday, but again, you had the defense doing several hours connecting the dots with the law as well today. What do you make of how they finished?
So I was actually in court yesterday and today. So I not only saw what the content was, but I also saw the way it was delivered. Prosecutors, very clinical, going through the elements of the charges and applying what we saw in the trial to the law. It was almost like being in a law school class. That's what it really was. Trying to show the jury why they should determine guilty on all counts. Now, the defense, totally different strategy. Very conversational, almost a little bit of theatrical, telling a story and a narrative. And remember the reason for this. Prosecutors need to prove every element of the charge beyond a reasonable doubt, whereas defense, they want to raise that doubt and say there's credibility issues with some of the key witnesses, and also prosecutors did not meet their burden. So both very effective. Jury has a lot of work to do next week.
Why do you think that the prosecution and defense decided to present their closing arguments in different ways? Because everybody loves a good story, and it's easier to remember a story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, style is really up to the attorney, but your goal is really to have those jurors, when they go into the jury room and they're looking at the verdict sheet, this is dry. These are complicated charges. RICO. You want the jury to be thinking about what you told them in that summation when they are going through those elements. So it's definitely style. Every juror is different. It's going to fall on them differently. Some may be more inclined to gravitate towards one or the other, but you want to paint with the broadest brush. So in my view, you're right. From a defense perspective, the story rules the day.
Okay, so this is the end of the trial. So can we take a look back, the process? As we mentioned, you were one of the key witnesses there, Sharay. You had been involved in maybe up to a dozen freak-offs. And the last time you possibly saw Diddy Combs was back in 2015, the last freak-off.
That's correct.
What was it? Take us into the courtroom. What was that moment like? You're coming face to face with this man that you had those experiences about a decade ago, and you're now there, and he's the defendant.
Well, I would say going into the scenario, I was pretty confident and comfortable, but when you walk into that environment, I got almost like an anxiety attack. Where whatever the thought process of what federal court is, it's not Judge Judy. The pressure, and then the room is huge. There's just rows and rows of lawyers and attorneys.
Did he look at you in any certain way at all?
So the room is so huge that literally, and me coming in and going to the stand, I could not even locate him, and which was a good thing, because I took a effort to just avoid any eye contact with literally anyone, because you want to go in there with just speaking the facts, not be biased, and just present what you're supposed to do. So that was the effort of mine, and I'll be honest, I was intimidated, I was nervous, and there was a lot of anxiety. So I did not look at him to leaving the court.
Well, Sharay, I'm sure in your line of work you try to maintain a level of discretion. And you said you were surprised to learn that some of these encounters were recorded. Why is that?
Well, so me, in terms of being involved, there was always a specific effort to take my phone. To take my phone, and the rooms were dark, and so I had no indication that any filming was going on. So to find out after the fact that there was a video, and then some possibility that video of me exists, was all news to me. That was kind of shocking. But at this point, everything's shocking, so you just manage as much as you can when you're thrust into the public eye in this kind of negative light.
Missy, how effective would you say the testimony of the so-called Punisher was, and all the male escorts that they brought onto the stand?
So I was actually in the courtroom for your testimony, and I told him before we came into the studio that he came off very, very credible. And you came off as you were just telling your story from such a genuine place. And by the way, his credibility has not really been at issue for the defense or the prosecutors. Your testimony is being applied to the elements of the case in a different way from both perspectives, but that genuine, the way that you took the stand and you really just told the truth was quite evident. So that testimony, critical to the elements of the case, and when it comes down to credibility, we have the credibility king over here.
I'll take that title.
There were a lot of key witnesses from the prosecution that were
that got really
same
destroyed on cross-examination.
Right.
A lot of issues.
Okay, so getting back to witnesses, the defense deciding not to present any witnesses. Do you think that's the right move?
So interestingly enough, I get asked this question all the time. It is actually a risk-averse strategy from a defense perspective, meaning it's the way that you proceed without taking on any additional risk, because once you start putting witnesses up there, they're subject to cross-examination, potential new doors get open, and you could have problems. Now here, the defense elicited a lot of testimony that supported their case through cross. So what we heard in the closing today is part of this strategy, that you use the prosecution's witnesses and say, well, they told you that. That was a prosecution witness, but yet this testimony inures to our benefit from a defense perspective. So it's strategic. It's something that every defense lawyer is making that choice at the last minute. In fact, the Friday before trial ended, the defense was about to call 2 witnesses from Combs Global. They decided not to. So it is a risk-averse strategy.
It is an interesting strategy. But Sharay, you're no lawyer, but you were involved, as I mentioned, in up to a dozen of these parties. Would you say there were some sex trafficking that took place?
So my understanding of the law is sex trafficking is based on state to state. So I knew with my participation, everything was in New York City, and I lived in New York City. I have seen that there are some of the escorts were flown from various places for these meetups and stuff. So I'm assuming that fits the criteria, but I have to honestly, the nuance of the law and what constitutes what is actually sex trafficking and what is just adult behavior, I can't really identify.
I understand.
All right. Well, you two don't go anywhere. We're going to have more on this discussion coming up.
Yeah, just hang in there with us. We'll be right back.